There are a number of guiding principles that inform the processes and approaches described throughout the policy. They can be found beginning on page 5. The first is that StFX does not tolerate any form of sexualized violence. StFX does not tolerate any form of retaliation by respondents or others directed at persons who've made a disclosure or formal report under this policy, nor at persons who've been named as respondents in such reports. StFX acknowledges that sexual violence is inherently connected to inequality and power imbalances on campus and in our society, and that sexualized violence is harmful and disproportionately impacts members of social groups who experience intersecting grounds of discrimination or marginalization, such as on the basis of sex, gender identity or expression, sexual orientation, indigeneity, race, age, ability, or class. StFX is committed to providing supports to survivors based on their personal experiences, whether or not the survivor chooses to make a formal report through the StFX internal reporting processes or any external reporting process, like reporting to the police. StFX recognizes that sexualized violence is underreported for a variety of reasons, including shame, stigmatization, self-blame, fear of reprisals, isolation, or fear of being dismissed or not believed. StFX is committed to reducing the barriers to disclosure and reporting of sexual violence at StFX to the extent possible. This includes a commitment to ensuring that survivors are not judged or blamed for experiencing sexualized violence. StFX recognizes that a barrier to reporting sexualized violence on campus is the risk to survivors of being subjected to a re-traumatizing reporting process. This policy aims to protect the safety and respect the choices of survivors. StFX recognizes that specialized knowledge and training is required to investigate and determine allegations of sexualized violence, and further, that investigations by qualified investigators are an effective and fair method for gathering information, testing the evidence and credibility of parties and witnesses, and determining whether a breach of this policy has occurred. StFX acknowledges that its obligation to maintain a non-discriminatory university environment under the Nova Scotia Human Rights Act includes an obligation to establish a procedurally fair and non-discriminatory process for responding to reports of sexual violence. In accordance with the above commitments, formal reports of sexualized violence under this policy will be investigated by qualified and trauma-informed investigators, in which the person who has reported experiencing sexualized violence, the reporting party, and respondents, who are those alleged to have caused harm, are parties to the investigation process. The reporting party and respondent are accordingly both entitled to copies of the investigation report and to copies of the decisions made by the responsible authority. This policy replaces the StFX Student Code of Community Conduct in cases involving sexualized violence. This policy also applies to all reports of sexual harassment and other forms of sexual violence involving employees at StFX. If there is any inconsistency between this policy and StFX workplace policies, including the harassment and discrimination policy, this policy governs. Similarly, this policy's terms on prohibiting sexual relations between university employees and students, which is found in Section 14, governs in the event of any conflict between it and the StFX conflict of interest policy or any other relevant policy. However, where there is any express conflict between this policy and the terms of a collective agreement, the collective agreement governs. In the event that a report under this policy engages issues under other policies, such as intersecting issues of discrimination, under the harassment and discrimination policy, the report will be investigated under this policy with the investigator's terms of reference, including consideration of all other relevant and appropriate intersecting issues and policies. A person who has experienced sexual violence can access other legal processes at any time, including criminal, civil, criminal injuries, professional, regulatory, or human rights processes. StFX recognizes the importance of sexual violence prevention and education, as well as ongoing training on the policy at StFX in order to achieve the purposes and goals of the policy.